Well, we'll leave the so-called Dark Ages behind to move to our next location in the art, architecture and sculpture category, and for this we're heading to the coast. The Minack Theatre in Cornwall perches on the side of a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The extraordinary open-air amphitheatre looks like it should date back to Roman times, but in fact it is much younger than it appears. So why has Will Gompertz selected the Minack Theatre?
The Minack Theatre is just a cracking example of British eccentricity, which turns out to be absolutely brilliant. I can't imagine it happening in any other country. So in the 1930s, Rowena Cade has this house on the seafront in Cornwall, and she envisages it as being an amphitheatre. Think of those great Greek or Roman amphitheatres, and sees that within the landscape of her grounds of this house, and starts to think about making it into a theatrical space where you go and watch shows outside. Needless to say, the first show she put on was Shakespeare's The Tempest, which is kind of perfect for that particular environment, but also perfect that it's a great English playwright in an external space dealing with a story of the sea and of eccentricity, which is what you get plenty of in the Tempest. And I just think that if you're going to enjoy theatre and if you're going to enjoy Shakespeare, where better to go than see it outside at the Minack in Cornwall?
It must be the most exciting location for a theatre in England. The Minack attracts more than 80,000 playgoers every year, as well as more than 150,000 visitors who come to see this arresting sight during the day. We joined them to find out more.
My name's Phil Jackson, theatre manager of the Minack Theatre. Well, here we are on the cliffs in Porthcurno. We're in the main auditorium. This is open-air theatre at its most open-air. The Atlantic is just in front of us here. Back in the 20s, this was just a piece of wild cliff until Rowena Cade came to live here with her mother. They built a house on the cliff just above us, and she got involved in local theatre. She was very creative. She was a seamstress, and she got involved with a local amateur company making costumes, and they got a bit adventurous and did a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream in a wood. And then a couple of years after, they thought, well, it'd be nice to do another one, and we'd do The Tempest. And this was her cliff garden. She gradually started to terrace the cliff and make it into a garden. And they thought, well, the ideal place to do The Tempest would be on the cliffs. And so Rowena, with her gardener back in the 31, terraced out this bit of cliff, built a stage at the bottom, and they put on a production of The Tempest. She had a wonderful gardener called Billy Rawlings. She always used to say that Billy could cut granite like a knife through butter. So now we're sat in a theatre which since 1932 has been housing or putting on shows, and now it's rather big, and we now get 100,000 people to watch shows every year. The theatre is a bit like a Roman theatre. A lot of people think it is an ancient. They come across it and think it's an old Roman theatre that somebody's smartened up. Well, actually, in some ways, it's more akin to a Greek theatre than a Roman, because the Roman theatres tended to be inland and had back walls, whereas the Greek theatres tend to be more open and not a back wall, and sometimes on the coast like this is. Building an open-air theatre in the UK is probably not one of the most sensible things to do. But we are lucky here, right where we are on the coast near the West End, that the weather changes so quickly, and it doesn't have a chance. We're in a little microclimate, so we quite often get away with the weather. She built the theatre in this bit of cliff because it was naturally shaped. All she had to do was scrape out, I say all she had to do, but she had to scrape out all of the rocks and material that were in the cliffs and to level it out. And it's actually got a natural amphitheatre shape, except that it's got no back wall. The Atlantic is the back wall. And it started off just being a grassy stage and grassy terraces. We still retain a lot of grass terraces, but as the theatre became busier, she had to concrete over the stage, because if you've had 6 weeks of theatre productions in the summer, and you got rain or sun, and you got dust and mud on the stage, and so the more shows she did, the more stress that was put on the theatre, which is why we now get a lot of concrete seats and a concrete stage in it. As an experience, it's a bit of a challenge. Some people have called it an extreme sport coming to watch a show here at the Minack, but it's an experience, and that's what it is. It's a hard theatre. It's not the easiest theatre to watch a show in, but it is glorious, and you get the right evenings, and most of the time, as I say, we're very lucky. We're standing here now with the wind blowing and the rain coming down on us, and you wouldn't think it's going to be a great night. But tonight, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have a beautiful evening, sunny evening, no wind, but it's difficult to imagine that now. But if you're sat here with the wind driving the rain into your face, It's not the most pleasant experience, but it is an experience, and that's what coming to the Minack is all about. It's open air theatre. This is open air theatre at its most open air. We can hear the sea crashing behind us. We're right on the edge, and if you're here, it's very difficult for actors actually. They can sit here waiting for their cue, and suddenly the dolphins go past, and it's very easy to get distracted and miss a cue, so they have to be right on it. There was a production we had here last weekend, and it was a beautiful sunny afternoon. All of a sudden the pod of dolphins went past, and all the actors must have seen was the audience's hands pointing out to sea above their heads and wonder what on earth's going on, and everybody suddenly attention totally taken to this pod of dolphins going past. So there's a problem for the actors as well when something like that happens. From the 80s, to make it practical, to make it viable really, so it became a tourist attraction as well, because people wanted to come and see it. They were beginning to learn about it and know about this place, and so that was how that income helped the theatre finance itself. And since then it's gone from strength to strength. And I guess it's the days of the internet now have actually broadcast it far and wide around the world, and so it now become world famous, and we'll have 250,000 people through here this year.
That was Phil Jackson, the theatre manager. Rowena Cade, the lady behind Minack Theatre, was born in Derbyshire in 1893. She was the daughter of a mill owner and apparently first took to the stage at the age of 8. After the First World War, she moved to Cornwall and built a house overlooking the sea near Porthcurno. In such a remote location, entertainment had to be homemade, and she became involved with a local theatre group which staged an open-air production of Midsummer Night's Dream in 1929. For their next project, The Tempest, the theatre group needed a more dramatic stage. Rowena initially offered her garden, but decided instead to build a stage into the cliff beneath her house. So, how did she go about building an amphitheatre into the cliff?
Well, it was very much a DIY project, and a remarkable achievement for that. Initially, I think she just hacked out enough of the rock to make places people could perch on and a stage. But then she and her gardener, Billy Rawlings, began to make it a bit more sophisticated with cement, with Celtic designs in it. But its essential quality for me is the fact that it is quite organic and of the place. It's not over-engineered.
It's a wonderfully eccentric English amateur operation which works magnificently because of its extraordinary setting. It is very much like a slightly grand back garden which has been turned into a public space with a fantastic setting, and that is so English and so seductive.
It sounds like the construction must have been terribly difficult. I mean, just sort of thinking of lumping bags of sand up to the beach to mix with the cement in order to make a flat surface.
It indicates for me the power of place and how a relatively modest construction in an extraordinary natural environment to produce something that is ephemeral but will last in everybody's memory is just as powerful as some of these great architectural places. As an experience, of course, there is always that frisson of wondering whether it's going to rain and whether the dolphins are going to appear in the bay and all of that, which I'm sure adds to it. It's just much less self-contained than a normal theatre.
There is nothing else like it anywhere.
It is a bit of a hostage to the weather, isn't it? Or hostage to fortune. I mean, it looks like it'd be more at home on the Amalfi Coast. But perhaps what you're saying is that adds to the charm, the element of danger.
I think it probably helps you select the repertoire. I mean, The Tempest was the first production, and that was obviously not just because of the reference to the weather, but the fact that it was on a rocky coast. I think you would choose works that the environment kind of reinforced.
Macbeth, perhaps, on a bad day.
Macbeth.